housing, I'm going to talk about it specifically in the context of affordable homeownership as compared to the rental tenure. That's what my research focused on. And just to give you a little bit of context, in working with the Sydney North Saanich Industrial Group, and in my experience in both my work life and my volunteer life, and looking at some of the housing issues in Victoria, there's a lot of focus on affordable housing in Victoria. For sure there is. There's very little focus and indeed very little understanding of what workforce housing actually is within the broader spectrum of affordable housing. So that's what I wanted to focus on. And I particularly wanted to focus on housing in the home ownership tenure because the preponderance of solutions and programming for affordable housing in the capital region is in the rental tenures. That gives you a little bit of background as to why I took a look at this subject. You know what? I know my hands go like crazy. Can I put this in here?
Yeah, right.
Great. Now I won't like throw it somewhere. Okay. Okay, so what is workforce housing? And when you look at this from an academic perspective, and there's lots of work that goes into studying housing, the term affordability is itself a relational term. So there's not a price point that's affordable. What's affordable for one family is not affordable for another family, and it's all along the spectrum. So generally the accepted definition, if you will, about affordability is housing that costs about 30% of the gross income of a household. Now, you probably know, being in the real estate business, that when we're talking about the home ownership tenure, sometimes that's pushed up a little bit further, depending upon your financer and the individual, maybe 32, 33%. I've even actually heard of some very recent affordable home ownership projects in Vancouver stretching it up to 40%. But if we're going to talk about academic definitions and what's commonly accepted, it's 30% of the gross income. Now, when you're talking about workforce housing, you're not talking about everybody. Academically, when you're talking about workforce housing, you're talking about that percentage of the population that is earning between 80% and 200% of the area median income in terms of you know, what people make in the area in which you live. So this indeed is the median income for Greater Victoria, and this is taken from the 2011 Canada Stats of incomes in the area. And as you'll see, it's kind of a sad picture. The one income median for an individual is $26,000, and when you go up to the 200%, it's up to $52,000. So these are probably not your prime purchasers. But when you get into the two-income households, you're looking at the median income of $78,000 for a two-income household, and up to 200% is $156,000. I think I do have to hold this. So why this range? Why am I specifying 120 right in the middle of it? Well, as Michael was saying, part of my research took a look at what a number of different municipalities across the country are doing in terms of addressing affordable home ownership in their communities, and where there are programs to address affordable home ownership, and when they consider income as a criteria for participating in it, they usually cut off the income at 120%. However, not all programs actually even have an income upper level criteria, but where they do, it is usually around 120%. So that's why that one's specified in there. So when you talk about affordability, there's kind of two components of it. There's the getting into the market, and there's the staying in the market. And so these two charts take a look at the cost of each of those factors. The one on the left is a study that's done on a yearly basis. And it takes a look at a number of different cities, internationally speaking. It's an international study, but I just pulled out the Canadian cities here. And it shows the median ratio. And what this does is it takes the median price of standard homes and the median income and divides one by the other and gives you a ratio. And what that tells you is that in Victoria, for a median income owner, it takes 6.3 years of salary to purchase the median home. And this is the ranking of the affordability of Canadian cities. So there was 35 Canadian cities that were considered in this survey, and being number 35, Vancouver, no surprise, least affordable in terms of getting into the market. But what is kind of nasty is that the four cities on the least affordable, if you will, are all cities in British Columbia. And Victoria is number 4, though we're only slightly edging out Toronto. Now over here, this is a study, this is actually a quarterly report done by RBC Economics that takes a look at the carrying costs. So this is the cost of staying in. Once you get in, how much of your income is allocated to the cost of carrying your housing. Now, in the slide before, where it said maybe 30–32% would be considered affordable. So this is what the costs are in the respective cities across the board. So as you can kind of see, certainly in the case of condominiums, it's not so much the staying in, because as Cameron and some of our previous speakers were saying, money's cheap right now, and it has been for a while. It's the getting in that is the biggest problem as far as affordability is concerned. And one thing that I should note is in the RBC economic study, the assumptions that they put into this are that the buyers are putting 25% down and doing a 25-year amortization with a 5-year term. Now, that is the case for a number of buyers, particularly move-up buyers, but as you probably know, the 25% down is a bit of a threshold hurdle for first-time home buyers. So as I go forward in the study and I'm talking about first-time home buyers, I'm going to be looking at probably those buyers that you would be familiar with as a first-time home buyer who are taking advantage of the CMHC rules and getting in with 5%. Okay, so why are things kind of nasty in BC? Well, we know housing is expensive in a number of our urban centres, but we also need to take a look at the other part of the equation, I should say, which is incomes. So this is the comparing incomes in British Columbia with incomes in other provinces. And this is the after-tax income of households with 2 earners in the households. So you can see that BC is challenged on the income side for our home buyers. And this is particularly problematic for employers because, as you've heard from, I think, I'm not sure who said it, but I think it was our CMHC speaker who was saying about the migration between provinces. Well, here's part of the reason. If your income is 69 here and it's 83 there and the housing prices are less, there's some reason for that migration. But this is one of our challenges, and this is one of the factors that goes into affordability. So this is Greater Victoria. This is looking at the trajectory of median family incomes from 2000 to 2011. So the greenish-yellow line there are single persons. The red line up at the top are 2-income households, and then the blue line is in the middle is everybody all together. So what you can see with a picture being worth 1,000 words is that although there's a slight increase, it is slight. And in the case of actually singles, the income has gone down. Sorry, it went over the other way. The income has gone down 12.1% from 2000 to 2011. On the other hand, this is a look at housing prices, the median sales price, and this is of single-family detached homes, and this is data provided from the Victoria Real Estate Association, and thank you for that. So this is broken out by municipality, which I know is difficult to see. It's just a mangle of color, particularly there at the back. But you can certainly see that the trajectory of this chart, as compared to the trajectory of the previous chart, is quite a bit different. So that's where you see the issue of affordability shaping up. Housing prices going up, incomes going up at a much slower rate. And so, taking a look at those two issues together, the rate of income growth and the rate of increase in the price of different types of homes, what I did was I mapped out the last year in which this particular type of housing, so this is single-family housing, was affordable to a median income family, 2 incomes. So the dark green is for the average median income, and the lighter green, which might be, is it hard to see? The lighter green back here? I'm terribly sorry about that. But the lighter green goes out a few more years on each one, because that's 120%. So, but you can see that single-family homes have been not affordable for some time in most municipalities, and these standing out there, red spots, are actually red because there's nowhere in this time frame that housing in those two municipalities, North Saanich and Oak Bay, were affordable to a median income earner as a first-time home buyer. Okay, so so the red represents 200%. So that was the last year that those particular municipalities were affordable for a median earner getting into the market, or for 200% of median getting into the market. These are townhouses. So if you add townhouses onto it, you can see, of course, that the affordability reaches out much further. And I think the light blue is a little bit easier to see on there. Those black lines across those two municipalities, Highlands and Chosen, is because that housing option wasn't available in those municipalities. So we have a little bit more length in affordability here, and of course when you add in condos, we still are, you know, affordable in a number of the municipalities in terms of 120%, and even at the median income in some municipalities we're still quite affordable. But as far as North Saanich goes, and Central Saanich is better, and Sydney is certainly better, but generally speaking, the peninsula certainly is a challenge, and for median and 120% of median income earners. Now the salaries of the Sydney North Saanich industry group are roughly, given what Michael was saying, about 150%. So if we were looking at this particularly for Sydney and North Saanich rather than all of our buyers, the whole chart would move over by about 2 years. So, that's blank. So the question is, why is this an important issue? Well, it's an important issue because of the challenges of not only skills attraction, but skills retention for business. There is a point in time where renters wish to become buyers. And what the research has shown with studies not centered in Canada, because I'm sorry to say I couldn't find any in Canada, but with studies in Europe, is that that time frame is about 5 years in. When somebody is you know, chosen their career and they're about 5 years in and they're wanting to set down roots, that's when the notion of buying becomes of primary importance as compared to renting. And when those folks live in an area where that's not an option for them, that's when companies are at risk of losing their investment in their staff, because they'll now take their very good refined skills to a market that they can afford. It's important in terms of community building and social cohesion. So when you think about communities that aren't affordable to, you know, say 50% of the population, and particularly young families that are starting off and starting to root in the community, you start to get communities that don't have a diversity in their population base, which makes it difficult for supporting a number of different types of businesses, and it just makes it difficult for social cohesion as a whole. You get these really segregated communities. For this audience, first-time home buyers become move-up buyers. So if you have less people that are able to get into the market, or if your people that are getting into the market aren't getting into the market until 10, 12 years later than perhaps, you know, their parents' generation, you have this longer-term effect on the overall movement in the market. It's important in terms of personal financial security, so for individuals. There's a number of studies that show that on a long-term basis, and probably you in the room would know this, is that people that are homeowners are more financially secure individually and as families than renters over the long term, because it is a forced savings. And also there's the asset building and just the opportunity to build a more secure base. And studies at the national level have shown that homeowners actually have about 11% less pressure on the use of social services. And the whole issue about, at that national economic level, the whole thing about levels that are set for retirement plans and such like are based upon the assumptions of a certain percent of the population being homeowners and having a certain level of financial stability. So a shift in, in the pictures of who can afford and how many can afford and what that might look like decades up the road, it's quite an important issue. So, as Michael was saying, there are other cities that are doing a fair bit about this, but given the time of the day, and given the time that I'm happy to wrap this up for you, I'll just tell you a couple of things. One of the things that I did look at, and sort of the central points of the research for which all of this data was a background, is that urban centres across Canada are really tackling the issue of affordable home ownership as an economic development issue. And they're developing programs, much like you would see programs to help people get into rental or to help people in subsidized housing. They're focusing program development on helping people get out of rental and get over the cost threshold, just the hurdle of getting into the market, because they don't need help once they're in. So there's a number of programs that are helping people get into the market, and those folks are then vacating or making available more rental units. So a number of municipalities across Canada are seeing this as an economic development issue and a way of addressing their whole spectrum of housing needs. I did look at 7 different programs across Canada. There are more than 7, but I could only look at so many. And at another point in time, I'm happy to talk about what that looks like and how it differs from what we're doing in Victoria. But I think the long and the short of it is that the issue of affordability is a relational issue, and that we need to fully understand what it means in our region. And we also need to be very, very clear that the issue of workforce housing is not the broader issue of affordable housing. And generally, when we speak about affordable housing in the capital region, we're not talking about this issue. So we have a whole contingent of workers whose affordability needs, like those of the Sydney North Sandwich Industrial Group, are not being addressed as assertively as they could be if we were having an economic